Nowadays, it's very rare that I come back to a game to play the DLC. My backlog is way too full to justify spending time on a game that I've already finished. There are so many games that I really enjoyed that have DLC, I just haven't had time to play it. Stuff like Final Fantasy XVI, Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, and Fallout 4.
私はメティス。あなたを守るために来ました。
Well, I suppose I can make an exception just this once. Episode Aigis is a remake of The Answer, a story expansion that takes place after the end of Persona 3. The original version was released in Persona 3 Fez, an expanded version of Persona 3 that included the original story and The Answer. Now it's been released as paid DLC for Persona 3 Reload. So I'm going to look at everything Episode Aigis has to offer, give my thoughts, and hopefully help you decide whether it's worth your money. The story takes place on the 31st of March, less than a month after the end of Persona 3. The remaining members of SEES are still processing their grief and preparing to go their separate ways, until they're attacked by a mysterious figure claiming to be Aigis' sister. Aigis awakens to the power of the wildcard and stops their attacker before she's able to kill Ken. Because God forbid they make me happy. The mysterious figure, who we now know as Metis, says that she came to save Aigis from being stuck in a time loop. It turns out that the entire dorm is trapped reliving March 31st over and over again, and the only way to escape this predicament is to go into the basement.
This is how you fucking leave. Dad, is that you? Get out! Oh, fuck! Get the fuck out, Twitter! Oh, oh!
Underneath the dorm, the team finds the Desert of Doors. Once again, SEES, now including Metis and being led by Aigis spotting a new tactical look, must venture through unknown territory and fight their way through shadows so they can escape the time loop. Throughout the story, we learn more about each character's past, we see how the final battle of Persona 3 changed the team, and we can take on some pretty challenging boss fights. So that's a basic overview of Episode Aigis. It's pretty much just more of the main game, which is great, but there are aspects of it that I'm not that keen on. I'll move on to more in-depth elements of the DLC, but I'll put a spoiler warning up before talking about any more of the story. The gameplay of Episode Aigis is largely unchanged from the base game. You make your way through a new dungeon, the Abyss of Time, while fighting shadows and progressing through the floors. It's exactly like Tartarus. Instead of going up, now you go down. Atlus essentially did this.
You got it set to M for mini, when it should be set to W for Wumbo.
I didn't like Tartarus in the base game. I thought it was a boring dungeon that wasn't interesting enough to be the main focus of the RPG side of the game. The Abyss of Time is slightly more interesting because at the end of each section we get a flashback for each member of SEES. This feels more rewarding than an old document to give to Elizabeth in exchange for money. But the fact that they basically just flipped Tartarus upside down and made me pay for the privilege of playing it does kind of piss me off. The dungeon crawling is slightly different now, with you playing as Aigis. She can engage shadows from a distance with her guns rather than slashing at them with a sword like Makoto. As you progress through the Abyss, you can upgrade her abilities so she can shoot further, faster, and break objects to get materials just by running into them. Since you're trapped in the dorm, the scope of the game is much more restricted. You can't really go outside to spend time with your social links because right now, outside doesn't even exist. But there are still some things you can do in the dorm to get a bit of the social side of Persona while you're trapped. Within the Abyss of Time, you can find items like DVDs, video games, and books that let you spend time with the members of SEES. There's no reason not to do this since time is no longer a finite resource, and hanging out with team members gives them new abilities to use in battle. It's nice to see the characters interact again, with some scenes demonstrating the character growth we saw in the main story, like Junpei trying to break up disagreements rather than instigating them.
Take a deep breath, deep breath, deep breath, deep breath.
There are going to be spoilers from this point onwards. I'll add a timestamp on screen and in the description to let you know when it's over. As SEES make their way through the Desert of Doors, we see glimpses into the past of each member of the team. These include Ken at the police station after his mother's death, Mitsuru's first experience in Tartarus, and Junpei the night that Akihiko recruited him.
Back with another milk. Help! Help!
All these flashbacks are the moment that everyone awakened to their personas, or in Aigis' case, the reason she awakened as the wildcard. Once the team reaches the bottom of the Abyss of Time, they encounter a shadow of the protagonist, who they've constantly referred to as him for the entire story. Despite the fact that his name is Kitchen Sink, it's breaking my immersion! The Abyss of Time came into existence as a reaction to Tartarus, and it was meant to disappear at the same time as the tower. but personas distort time and space. And a strong will shared by a group of persona users has the potential to distort it even further. In this case, the team's wish to be reunited with the protagonist kept the Abyss from disappearing. After the shadow of Makoto is defeated, each member of SEES receives a key. Once all 8 keys are brought together, they're able to open a door to exit the Abyss. But there's a catch. One door will lead everyone to the present, another will lead them to the past, before the battle with Nyx. This splits the team, with Yukari and Mitsuru wanting to go to the past to save the protagonist, Akihiko and Ken wanting to return to the present to continue living their lives, and everyone else unsure of what to do. So how do you even begin to make this kind of decision? So yeah, everyone suddenly decides to take the keys by force in an arena. Once Aigis and Metis emerge victorious, the team brings the keys together and uses them on the door in Paulownia Mall, which takes them to Nyx's seal. We learn that Makoto sacrificed himself not to seal Nyx away, but to keep Nyx out of the hands of another being, Erebus, the manifestation of humanity's negative emotions and wish for death. You know whenever something mildly inconveniences you and you say, "Kill me"? Yeah, you did this. The team is able to defeat Erebus and they emerge in the Velvet Room. We learn that Metis is actually the side of Aigis that she wanted to cast out due to her grief. She wanted to become a machine again. Metis is the personification of the feelings Aigis developed by growing with the main cast. Aigis rejoins with Metis, becoming whole again. The group wakes up in the dawn, with the date finally rolling over to April 1st. Aigis decides that she wants to continue attending school with everyone, and the team is free to move on with their lives, keeping the Revokers close by for the day that they might need them again. Overall, I enjoyed the story of the answer, despite the conflict within the group feeling kind of sudden in my opinion. But that's the rest of the answer's story. It feels like a natural progression of the main game's ending, but there are some aspects that bother me. First of all, while I feel that the progression of the story is pretty smooth and consistent for the most part, it takes a turn as soon as Yukari asks if you can take someone's key by force. I understand that she felt strongly about the protagonist, but her build up to this felt somewhat rushed, which ties into my second issue with the story. The overall tone and presentation of the story feels like it's been watered down from the original version that we saw in Fez. Everything from the voice acting to the script to the cutscenes, it feels less dark. This isn't to say that the voice acting is bad, not at all. Everyone in this game has done a spectacular job. From what I've seen of the original, Yukari is a lot colder and harsher in her dialogue, especially towards Aigis, which makes sense. Aigis has inherited the power of the person that Yukari loved the most. It makes her feel inadequate. In terms of cutscenes, here's the original version of Makoto fading away after the team beats his shadow.
Whoa, 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 hey.
And in the reload version, Makoto does his best Shrek impression and transforms into the butterflies of the Velvet Room. I understand why the original Fez version of the answer is controversial among the fan base for changes made to the characters. Personally, I think it kind of makes sense that the cast acts somewhat out of character. They're grieving over someone who was a huge part of their lives for the past year. Right, the spoilers are over. The criticism of the DLC is going to be a lot more vague from this point onwards. When episode Aigis was announced as part of the expansion pass, it was immediately met with negative reviews on Steam. I didn't understand it honestly, but then I thought about it from a different perspective. It's like if they remade Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, and they locked all the platinum content like the Distortion World, Battle Frontier and improved regional decks behind a paywall of half the amount of the base game. It's difficult to call Reload the definitive version of Persona 3 without it including the content from either Fez or Portable in the base game. Making us pay extra for the answer, the more controversial of the two expansions, is kind of shitty, and this compounds the issue of the game not including the female protagonist. In my experience, I found that episode Aigis was noticeably more difficult than the base game. I found that more than one boss would one-shot my entire party before I could act, despite the fact that I was at a decent level. And now onto something that I saw a ton of people complaining about on Twitter, Joker. He's an optional boss, so I won't dwell on his boss fight for too long, but I don't find a boss fight that has specific rules to follow very fun. As soon as you break one of the rules that the game doesn't tell you, Joker insta-kills your entire team. It's an exhaustive exercise of trial and error that I don't have the time or patience for. Listen, I know the rules are available online, but I can't be asked grinding to fuse the right personas to accommodate his rule set and beat him within the turn limit. It's the same reason I never did the Elizabeth boss fight in the base game. In summation, I don't think the Joker boss fight was very fun, but I feel like the anger at his inclusion was a bit over the top. I'll take as much Persona 5 as I can get. Here's hoping Persona 5 Fighters gets announced soon. Now on to the main question. Is episode Aigis worth your money? The expansion pass cost me $28.99, and it took me about 16 hours to finish. You do get other things in the expansion pass like additional background music and costume, but this entire package is not worth close to 30 quid, almost half of what the game cost me at release. In conclusion, episode Aigis is a story that uses the characters and mechanics of Persona 3's world to examine what grief does to us, and the choice we're given when someone close to us dies: dwell on the past and be consumed by grief, or move on and live the life they would want for you. But it's a short journey consisting of some of the most tedious aspects of Persona 3 that struggles to justify its price tag. 7 out of 10. If you want to experience this, pick it up on sale.
How to